Good morning. I'm Terry Nelladove from the Herb Institute. The Herb Institute, I'm curious, just of everyone here, how many of you recognize the Herb Institute at the University of Michigan? Oh, that's great. Including our students in the back. The Herb Institute is the business sustainability partnership between the Ross School of Business and the School for Environment and Sustainability at the university. And we do sustainability teaching, research, and business engagement. We cover a broad range of themes, not just environment. Things like carbon, climate, energy, water are all super important to our students and our faculty, as are social, community, labor, and human rights issues. So we take what we call a robust sustainability viewpoint. We look at all of the non-financial risks and opportunities facing companies. And we help companies recognize and then manage those risks and opportunities to be both more profitable in the short term and more competitive in the long term. Food and agriculture is one of the top interest areas for our students. I would say out of our roughly 90 to 100 dual degree MBA master's students, probably a quarter are interested in food and agriculture as their sustainability topic. So this is a subject that's near and dear to our heart. And today's panel, we're going to step back and try to understand better the supplier perspective on these sustainability issues, on how providers recognize customer priorities and needs, risks, and how they manage those within their own operations. So I'll briefly introduce the panel, and then each panelist has a couple of minutes for introductory comments. We have a really great diversity of companies and individual experiences. Maria Balice, Senior Director of Communications and Strategic Partnerships from Applegate, which is a subsidiary of Hormel, I understand. Leila Costa, Sustainability Architect for the Sodexo Group, University Liaison. I love the title, Sustainability Architect. Then Nicole Nicoloff, joining us from Gordon Food Service, from their sustainability function. And then Jeremy Moghtader from the University of Michigan Campus Farm. So we'll start with the introductory comments in just one moment. I wanted to make one personal connection and why this issue is particularly of interest to me. In a previous life, I was a sustainability consultant with Business for Social Responsibility, BSR. We worked a lot with mining, oil, and gas companies in the US and across Latin America and Asia on community and social risk. And then previous to that, I worked with Catholic Relief Services based in Peru. And we saw up close, when I was with CRS, Catholic Relief Services, we saw up close and personal the impact that large companies can have on local communities. So many times through CRS, we were sponsoring local development programs in the high Andes, in really remote communities, 1,000 kilometers from the capital Lima, often up at 3,000 or 4,000 meters elevation. And subsistence farming was usually the main economy, but some of these communities had large mining projects developed in their local communities. And often the farmers would look to the mining companies, and instead of opportunity, they would see potential competitors for their land, competition for water, and often they wouldn't realize any net benefits from the mining activity. And what we saw as CRS is that there is a huge opportunity for the local mining companies, especially in a community that's maybe at 4,000 meters on 1,000 kilometers from the capital, where there is no other economy in town other than the one the mining company is creating. There's a huge opportunity to really invest in local sourcing, in developing the agricultural base, invest in education. And so many times we were disappointed to see that the companies didn't recognize that, or they weren't willing to take the extra effort, which was often marginal, but the extra effort to invest in a strategic community development program, which often included supporting the farmers and sourcing locally. So this has been going on for years. It came to a head back in 2003 when I was working in Lima. And a media scandal started when an entrepreneurial and journalist went and started looking at the actual spend of one of the large mining projects. This is a project that was a $2 billion investment on about 8 hours by car from Lima. And they looked at where they were actually buying their catering supplies. And they found that they were importing mainly all of the grains, the vegetables from Lima. Meats were coming from Argentina and Brazil. They were flying in cheese and wine from France. And this hit the front page of the national newspaper, and a scandal broke out. And people were questioning, well, why bring in all of those supplies from Lima or even overseas when the local farmers are desperate for markets for their produce? So that was a long time ago, and a lot has changed since then. In fact, that company, that was part of the impetus for the catering company to start a local sourcing program and develop over the next 5 years a targeted strategy for sourcing the vast majority of its food purchases from the local community around that mine. And then it started a company foundation and shared that methodology worldwide with the company through their global foundation. And then later they went out and started teaching other mining companies and other caterers how to do that. And that was 15 years ago. And a lot of progress has been made in actually developing strategies for local sourcing and sustainability. And I think these are some of the experiences that we have just the right mix of panelists to share with us. So we'll start with Maria and ask that you share perhaps 5 minutes of introductory comments. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you so much for inviting me and Applegate and Hormel to participate in this conference. So Applegate, for some of you who might not know, is the nation's leading natural and organic meat company. We were founded in 1987 by a man named Stephen McDonald, who dabbled in vegetarianism when he was in college, but asked the question, what if you weren't afraid to read a hot dog label? And that's how the company got started. And it's a mission-based company, and we like to say that our mission is changing the meat we eat. And that mission has evolved through the years since 1987. It started out with clean ingredient statements, no nitrates, no nitrites, and evolved from that into sourcing from agriculture, animal agriculture that doesn't use antibiotics in the system. And when we started out, we had a handful of farms, and now we source from over 2,400 farms that are using and don't use antibiotics, are 100% certified for higher animal welfare. And now we are looking into other ways to change the meat we eat, including looking at GMOs. We've made a commitment to pursue third-party verification on non-GMOs. We're hoping to do that by 2020 across our product line, which is very difficult since most of the animal feed in the U.S. is GMO for corn and soy. And this year we're actually looking at sourcing from practices that contribute to soil health and looking at regenerative agriculture, and just launched a product in a test market sourced from regenerative agriculture practices, a pastured pork product. So we really see our brand role. We really haven't been into food service, and that's where the purchase from Hormel purchased Applegate in 2015, and we had no food service business whatsoever, but through the resources and capabilities of Hormel, we've been able to really expand and build that food service capability. So bringing that demand to campuses and health institutions. But we really see our brand role as educating consumers and creating demand for products that are sustainable or higher animal welfare. So as I said, when we started, people didn't understand antibiotic resistance and why they should choose products that were produced without antibiotics, but we were able to work with NGOs and other organizations to help educate consumers and build that demand for those kinds of products.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Leila.
Maria. And I did have a presentation, but if we can't put it up, that's not a, okay, there it is. Oh, okay, perfect. So I'm Leila Costa. Thank you for having me here today. I work for Sodexo, which is a large global company, but that's not how I started off. I started off, I was a recent college graduate and started off in New York City as an AmeriCorps member, working on the grassroots level, really seeing firsthand the brokenness of the food system. I got placed with the Brooklyn Community Foundation, which was working in all 70 neighborhoods in the borough. I was very lucky to go out and, it's one way of phrasing it, finding myself waist deep in New York City's compost waste of whole vegetables and produce, and just seeing the immense amount of food waste in that community, working with elementary school students in their community gardens and seeing how they have limited access in their food deserts, experiencing food insecurity at that young age, and then also among my other AmeriCorps members, mostly on food stamps. So I took those experiences and through my next steps in my career, really wanting to figure out why are we experiencing all these broken pieces in our food system? How can we start coming up with solutions and collaborating to really make changes that ultimately we want to be able to feed people, we want to be able to sustain our communities, we want our environments to be resilient. And I really looked at corporations for the solution as I started to learn more, starting my job off at Sodexo, working in universities across the US and Canada, and seeing that tremendous buying power that they have and ability to, if they want to make a change, to eliminate certain aspects of chemicals or different products or change what they're purchasing, the ripple effects throughout the supply chain. So what guides those commitments? Our Better Tomorrow 2025 corporate responsibility roadmap that you see up here, really small text probably for in the back, so I'm sure these slides will be sent out. But the point here is that we have measurable objectives with everything that we're looking into, and we try to really focus on a holistic picture in addressing sustainability at our company, with also aligning with the UN Sustainable Development Goals. It's important to really, as we acknowledge we're a large company working in 80 countries with 420,000 plus employees, that we understand the responsibility that comes with that, and that we really lead in this space. So our commitments are focused on the three roles that we have as an employer, a service provider, and a corporate citizen, and then the three impacts that we have on individuals, community, and the environment. And that gives us these 9 objectives in blue and then 3 measurable objectives in red. There are 2 specific ones that are focused on sustainable purchasing. You can't see it, but in the middle row there to the right, it says source responsibly and provide management services and reduce carbon emissions. So we have a commitment to reduce our carbon emissions in Scope 1 and Scope 2. By 34% from a 2011 baseline. So not just looking at our operations on a campus. So we're at University of Michigan here, we do concessions and looking at our operations here, but also throughout all of our supply chains, for example, and sustainable palm oil. And then we also have another commitment around supporting small and medium-sized enterprise, diverse enterprises, and have a commitment to $10 billion towards the small, medium-sized enterprises annually. This is an older slide I found. I thought it's interesting, kind of gives some perspective that we're really growing our focus on small and medium-sized enterprises. This is from 2016, and it was said over the lifetime of our focus on this program, we're at $2 billion in spend. So really kind of looking throughout our supply chains in 39 plus countries, and now I'm sure that number is much higher. How can we grow? How can we connect more with those community-based organizations? Here's a more updated slide from 2018. In the US, we focus a lot on diverse suppliers. Many of our state institutions have requirements around that. That has been very helpful in us really prioritizing those commitments to source from minority-owned businesses, women-owned businesses. And many of these are also smaller businesses as well, so with a $915 million spend this past year. And then we have a number of commitments in our various supply chains, from animal welfare, recently achieving 100% cage-free eggs across all of our supply chains in the U.S. We have a global commitment around that. We've partnered with the Fair Food Program, have a number of initiatives around fair food purchasing with our coffee and tea programs. We have a commitment to 100% sustainability around our seafood purchasing, so really going down to the species level, not just picking MSC or Monterey Bay Stewardship and aligning with that, but coming up with our own guidance, because it really is very specific depending on the fishery you're looking at. We have a number of local sourcing initiatives. This has really been great to move us along on that kind of state focus. So in Vermont, or hopefully here in Michigan, more work around local sourcing, and partnering with the Department of Ag in those states. These are just a couple initiatives on the right that are some flagship initiatives where we've had a lot of progress. And then one that does seem to be across the board and common among our universities is this focus and excitement around plant-based foods, and that this really is a way to move the needle in terms of carbon impact, in terms of connecting with those local smaller farmers, and how we can also just be healthier with the way that we're eating. Thank you.
Well, hello, everyone. If you look at the program, you'll see Jane Feenstra. I am not Jane Feenstra, so I'm putting a disclaimer in there. I had to step in for her, so she had an emergency back at the home office. So my name is Nicole Nicoloff. I'm our education segment manager. So part of my role is really getting engaged and being the voice for our education customers and bringing that back to Gordon Food Service, and developing different tools of what we can do to help their lives be a little bit easier. So for those of you who don't know who Gordon Food Service is, we are the largest family-held, privately owned food service distributor in the country. We cover all of North America. So as you see, we have actually 16 distribution centers in the United States, and we have 8 over in Canada. You can see the map of where we cover in the United States. So about half the country. Hopefully that'll grow soon more and spread past to the west side of the country. But you might have seen our stores, Gordon Food Service stores. Those continue to grow as we look at a lot of, really our focus the last couple of years has been in more of food insecure areas, and putting those stores in to be able to bring some nice healthy food to our customers. So that's a big focus for us as well. So when we look at stewardship as a company, we really look at it by the three different P's, if you will. So we look at people, planet, and profit. And everything we do, we balance our environment and our social initiatives are with our responsible business decisions that we do. So we can't make investments in these programs if we don't have a profitable business. So we really want to look at that. But with those 3 P's, we really look at the environment and the impact on that, what our social responsibility is to our communities as well, and then also what are we doing working with our vendors on a corporate level and their sustainability programs. And stewardship, so we look at stewardship more on a broader aspect than just sustainability. You see these 4 different areas that as a company we focus on. So we look at sustainable operations and how internally we are handling our operations when it comes to a variety of different things, whether that's our contribution, our transportation, our waste management, and all that. We look at our responsible sourcing, so all of the different vendors that we're working with, and how those could look at our national brands and our private brands and how we do that. We look at the whole supply chain. How can we make that more efficient? And then also food safety is a big issue for us as well. And we're constantly making better developments along that piece of it as well. In the bottom corner, you see empowering people. This is a big focus, especially in our diversity and inclusion. We want to make people feel welcome and feel comfortable. So we have a lot of programs that we have, a lot of trainings in our different distribution centers along at the home office as well. And then we do a lot of mentorship programs and helping those emerging leaders to really help become the next leader within the company. So there's a lot of training opportunities there. But lastly, I think the one that I would say is probably most endearing to most of our employees is our community support. I applaud our company and how engaged we get in the community with what we do. We really spend a lot of time with local different nonprofit associations to help build the community and get more engaged in that. And then, so part of my role, as I mentioned, is being that voice to the customer. And so a lot of fact finding that we really like to hear from our customers what their needs are. And in this whole sustainable stewardship space, there's obviously 3 strong needs that we see out there. Number one, our customers are saying they want to be able to see and view sustainable, clean, local products on an easy level, and how can they get that information. The second one is they want to know what the story is about that. Who are these manufacturers are you buying from? What are they doing to support their farmers, and their what are they doing within their companies? And then lastly, they also want to be able to track and measure their purchases to be able to meet the goals what they have as their own operation. So I want to give you a couple successes of what we've done. This past fall, we kicked off this Clear Choice program. Actually very proud of this because I was on the task force to develop this. What we did is we did a lot of research internally and externally, worked with a lot of customers, worked with a lot of people up in Canada as well to make this really a North American initiative. And what we've been able to do is, as you see these buckets here, we took a variety of different certificates or definitions that are out there that are in this clean world, if you will, offerings, and we were able to bucket it in these 6 different types of definitions. So sustainable seafood, special agricultural, environmentally friendly, animal care, ethically sourced, cleaner ingredients. And then we wanted to also be able to capture, because there's a lot of need for religious preferences, and vegan, and on the K-12 side, Buy American is a huge need. So we wanted to be able to capture all this information to be able to give it to our customers. So when they order now, they have the ability to filter on these different definitions to find the products that they need that are filtering under those different disclaimers that they're looking for. Another success that we have is this nearby tracking system that we have the ability to give our customers based on what their preferences or what their organization's local description is. We can be able to source and give reporting to our customers to identify what products meet that local description for them. So we've been doing that for about 10 years, and we're excited about it and been able to give good information, but we also know that we have to continue to make this program better, and one of the things that we continue to look and work on as well. Recently, as of the end of last year, actually, we developed an exclusive partnership with Thrive Coffee. For those of you who don't know who this is, you hear a lot around fair trade. This is actually a little bit bigger and better than fair trade because it's direct to farmers. So this partnership actually allows the farmer to be able to know exactly how much money they're going to be able to make from those crops. And what this has done is gotten the farmers in Guatemala and surrounding countries very engaged to know what they're making for their family, and they're being able to give that money back to the community and build schools and health clinics and all of that. So it's just been a huge win to see this establishment to be able to give back to these communities. Another one, don't know if you've heard this, but this was recently announced actually last month. This is a strategic partnership we have with Square Roots. So this is the urban indoor farming that you might have heard about. So basically what this is they're containers, and they have the ability to grow any types of produce. And they have they can build it based on the lighting and the right temperature and control. It's a pretty neat system. And so this actually now will empower this whole new generation for farmers to be able to get into and look at this. As we know, agriculture has declined, so we're really hoping that this will help re-engage farming as a whole to be able to get into this. So we just announced our first location will actually be in Grand Rapids at the home office, where we'll be putting in 10 containers to be able to ship local produce to our customers in that area. So more to come on that as we continue to grow this partnership. And then one other wonderful partnership that we have is this Relish Works. We developed this 2 years ago. It is part of Gordon Food Service. However, it is treated separately as a different company. They are, I would say, an umbrella to Gordon Food Service, but their whole main goal is to look at the whole next evolution of where food is going. So last year, they actually launched this Food Foundry Accelerator program. So this is where Kickstarters, basically, I'd like to say, I guess, is they can come and present their own idea of what they want to do. And then 5 actually out of those were awarded funding to be able to accelerate that program. I'm excited to say out of those 5, 2, as you see, Big Wheel and this Local Food Connection are really focused on local and really helping how we can get more local food to our customers. So that is definitely something very exciting that we're proud of. So let's talk about some challenges. With that, I talked about successes. Some of our challenges have been on the reporting side. There's a lot of different requirements and different programs that are out there. So how do we capture all of the right information that everybody needs? In that solicitation I talked about for Clear Choice and Nearby, we have only had about 60%. This has been an ongoing need for us to continue to get this information. So we're only as good as what our vendors can give us. So it's not the whole picture, unfortunately. It's we're trying to get that information and continue to work on that. But some vendors just haven't been able to supply that to us yet. On the plus side, though, we actually will give data that is underreported versus overreported, so we don't want to greenwash anything. But we want to be transparent about that as well. And then, obviously, growing regions continue to be a challenge for us. So throughout the year where we procure produce, it changes. So for us to react quickly to give that transparency all the time, it's a little hard. This is a very manual process for us. We collect all the data, and it continues to be an ongoing issue. So we are currently collecting the data one time a year. It's very labor intensive. We're trying to look at our systems of how we can make that better and easier for really everybody. And then lastly, the big question becomes all around purchasing and agreements that we have with our customers. Are they really walking the walk? They say they want this, yet when it comes time to buy the product, because it might be a little bit more expensive, they're not purchasing it, so then we're stuck with it. So it's a challenge. We have to just, things we continue to work through. Thanks.
Thank you. Jeremy.
So I had some pictures of the farm that I haven't. Oh, they're there. That's tripped. So I'm Jeremy Moghtader. Thanks, Alex. I'm Jeremy Moghtader. I'm the program manager for the University of Michigan Campus Farm, and the Campus Farm is really a student-driven space, and I'm there in many ways to help facilitate those students' achievement of their goals and to catalyze the kinds of partnerships that we have around campus, which I want to talk a little bit about. So we are, and can think of ourselves as a living learning laboratory for sustainable food systems work here on campus. And through partnerships with folks like M-Dining, as well as academic units and faculty like Ravi, that recognize that campus operations present an opportunity for authentic and high-impact student teaching, learning, and research around addressing sustainability issues, that we think that not only are students drawn to those spaces where they're working on challenges, they want and expect the institution to have an environment where not just the content of the curriculum, but the context of their learning and their living are all coming together in terms of a robust experience that they have. And it's not just an experience that's part of their campus experience, but an experience that's really core to their education and learning here while they're at the university. Feeding students healthy food, and the students have a strong focus on their mission. I'm just going to click through some pictures of the farm. Students have a strong focus on wanting to have food grown by students for students and to do those academic and operations integrations components. And while feeding students healthy food is super important and very core to what the campus farm is doing in our partnership with M-Dining, we're also understanding that the institution is really here to train the leaders and professionals and innovators of tomorrow, and how do we help collaborate between operations and academics to align with what we're doing in those spaces. So the farm is about 4 acres of production and research spaces. We have passive solar hoop house production. We're pushing a fair bit of spinach into the dining halls right now. We are USDA GAP certified, which is our certification that we carry to make sure that the food safety is going well within the university's compliance standards. And I think that in the context of this larger conversation that I'm happy that we're all having, I think that it's important to really understand that that as institutions of research and teaching and higher education, that it's really incumbent upon us to help lead in these spaces. That when we combine operations and academics, we can serve these sustainability goals and act as drivers inside of the larger society. As the first speaker mentioned, there are components on the demand side and on the research and innovation side that are institutions I think are particularly well suited to address because it matches our core mission of teaching, research, and innovation. So I look forward to this discussion.
Thank you. We're going to open up in 3 minutes to questions from the audience to start thinking of what's on your mind. I wanted to start with one lightning round of questions. You've already talked about how complicated this value chain is, from small farmers in Guatemala to the student and faculty and staff consumers here in the university, your customers who are often the university facilities that sign the contracts, and your suppliers, consolidators. So I'm curious, what is the one challenge in that entire value chain, the one challenge that keeps you up at night as you think about your social and environmental sustainability program? And then we'll open it up to even harder questions from the audience.
Scalability, because it's, especially when it comes to animal agriculture, it's, the things that that we want in terms of animal welfare, raising animals without antibiotics, and trying to do that at scale and keep costs down. It's a huge challenge and requires a lot of collaboration.
Scalability.
Engagement among our employees, among our suppliers, and then at the institutions that we support across all different departments. So not just the sustainability department, not just one student club on campus, but really aligning all those different stakeholders to demand what their purchasing priorities are so we can all start getting in the same lane.
Well, I think I said a few, but probably for us would be really being able to give everything that every customer needs. We try our best to be able to give as much as we can, but there's always something that comes up that we didn't think about that we have to then go back and try to find. But really is giving that transparency to our customers.
And I think the next panel will talk more about this, but I think for us it's really about operationalizing. How do we take advantage of all of those things that I mentioned in my introduction and leverage them to the best of our abilities to really be successful?
So these are challenges to fill not just one career, but many careers: scalability, engagement, one-stop shopping, and transparency and offerings, and then operationalization of learnings. So that's a great way to seed a discussion. I think we're ready to take questions from the audience. We'll take 2 or 3 together and then open it up to the panelists to respond. So first question.
Hi, thank you. I'm Patrick Dixon from the Kalmanovitz Initiative at Georgetown University. I had a question about the logistics and supply of this. So my understanding is over the past sort of 50 years or so, the largest innovation in large-scale American retailers is this hub-and-spoke approach. So you have a massive network of suppliers, everything comes into a massive center, and then it goes back out from that center to all of those purchasers. I'm not sure how it works in your businesses, but if you had a farm that's producing 20 miles up the road from here and everything goes into a massive hub in Chicago and then it gets shipped back to Ann Arbor, then that's a local supply. But does local supply even make sense to you guys from a logistical standpoint, or is that something that clients are just asking for, feeling like they're doing something that's helpful, but it doesn't really fit the way your business works?
So the challenges of hub and spoke versus local supply and what that means. Another question?
What were the criteria that you considered when you were developing the Square Root project? Because I'm looking at criteria for giving support in communities of need, where teaching new skills and looking at vacant land and food deserts. So just trying to weave that all together for piloting.
And your name and organization?
I'm working with the National Association of Aging and Service Nutrition Programs, which is Meals on Wheels and congregate dining, food to institution. And one of our big suppliers across the country is Gordon Foods. So, and I'm very interested in all of the participation here today, but I'm a dietitian also in Michigan.
Thank you. One last question.
Sure. This Matt Wooten from the Fair Food Standards Council. This question is more directed towards Jeremy. I would just like to learn a little bit more about the the scale of the Michigan Campus Farms operations. How many people work there? How much do you produce? How much goes directly into dining services? What are its aspirations over the long run in terms of being not only a model sustainable producer, but one that's scalable?
So scalability and current operations of the campus farm system. So great, I'll open up to the panelists. Hub and spoke versus local supply criteria for developing the Square Root. I think that was directed specifically at Nicole, and then scaling up campus farms. Who would like to start? Maybe the last with Jeremy.
So I think it's a really interesting question. So it's been a largely student-driven project without any staff really involvement until my position was created about 2 years ago, after a succession of student organizations and graduate students from CEs and other places on campus really worked to create the program. As soon as we were able to I was able to help the students get their food safety certification, we were able to start dining sales. Last year we sold about $60,000 of food onto campus. Basically all the food we're growing is going to M Dining currently, with the students do have some interest in reaching food access for other students around campus that don't eat just at the residence halls. We have a shared target goal of $100,000 next year of product. And the truth is in terms of scalability for our institutional priorities here at the university, the objective is to have a large enough campus farm that we have a functional living learning laboratory that we can help have students and in dining and other folks ask questions. And I'll tag team into one of the questions around the Square Root project, not addressing that directly, but we're working with the Center for Sustainable Systems on campus and doing a carbon footprint and water use analysis of an indoor shipping container system, and hoping to help institutional food providers understand a database context for whether or not that thing coming out of that box from 5 feet from them is, what are the attributes of that? Because there are different attributes that people are interested in supporting in their purchasing. So I think our current scale is we have 3, soon to be 4 passive solar hoop houses, and we have about 4 to 5 acres of outdoor production, including research. But the goal isn't to necessarily, in my previous existence, I ran a farmer training program and did stuff on a more statewide scale. Here, it's to really serve as a living learning, laboratory for the students. So.
Thank you. Nicole, Square Root.
So let's see. Let's hit the square roots question first, and then we'll go to the logistics piece. So I think to answer your question, that is one of the things as a company with our partnership, we're looking at where's the next place to go. We've got to get this up and running. It's a big undertaking, so we're in the process of, they're going to interview farmers and who wants to start doing this and all that. But I think one of the things outside of Square Roots that we've done internally that we're working on this year is a big initiative to kind of back to your question, how do we feed and get food to these food insecure areas? Looking at all these segments, it's a strong focus on the non-commercial, whether it's healthcare, schools, college, universities. How can we get these, in fact, the title is Building Healthy Communities. How can we get all of these segments working together and talking to bring food really to those who really need it. So my counterpart that's in healthcare and myself have taken on this initiative, and we're really wanting to bridge a lot of different customers together to say, how does this work? How can we help you get food? So I bring that up to say it's hot on our radar for us as a company to really understand and know that this is a big need to get this type of food and better food to the communities. So I think, we can talk about next steps. I know there's a plan. I'm not privy to what that plan is, but there is a plan of where they're going to put these containers. I think ultimately they want to be able to have these in all of our divisions to be able to feed the community. So do you have anything for anybody else to add to that? Okay. And then on the logistics piece of it, I would say as a company for us, we revamped about 1.5 years ago our whole supply chain and really looking at our efficiencies and what we're doing. We found, kind of back to your point, we might be going by something and it's going somewhere else for us to go and have to pick up. So we're always looking at how to make it more efficient and better. One of our big things is we don't want to drop off a truck and not have it filled if it's coming back to our distribution center. Doesn't make sense for us to do that. So we're always looking at ways of, if we're going by a manufacturer, could we pick up and bring it back to our distribution center to be able to feed? So it's constantly something we're looking at to make this more efficient and better. Thanks for the question.
Yeah, so that's a really important thing to note about backhauls. When you have access to that larger network of distribution, it's more efficient for the business, but there's also reduced truck miles, reduced carbon impact in distributing food. Often there's conversation about local and ASHE with local's not always sustainable in terms of truck miles. That's one of the cases from a climate perspective, so that's important to consider. That doesn't mean that that's always the priority of a campus. Sometimes the focus is more on having those closer partnerships and wanting to have those conversations with your vendors. So I still think that there's opportunity in talking, especially I've seen a lot of opportunities around produce, just because when you start going into the other product categories of meat, et cetera, there's a lot more safety concerns around purchasing local. So that's something that gets a little trickier. But with produce, being able to focus more regionally and thinking about how we can have those really close partnerships with local farms to plan our menus, to work with them to say, hey, we have a need for a potato, or we have a need for a beets or whatever it is, and we have this much demand, and we're going to build this into our menus, to give that assurance to farmers so then they can plan their growing seasons accordingly and connect them to our supply chain. I think those are huge wins, and there's lots more potential for work in that area. In terms of the other categories, as I said, it happens more on a very limited case-by-case basis. Local doesn't always work for purchasing meat or purchasing, again, some of those products that have increased safety risks. There's a lot more insurance overhead, a lot more liability that has to be taken on by those local organizations. So it's not always a good fit for the institutional marketplace. I'll note campus farms, a lot of our campuses do have some kind of on-campus hyper-local sourcing going on. Even in some of our really sustainable campuses, such as Warren Wilson, that has a campus farm, and most of the students have had some kind of interaction working with that farm. It's in North Carolina and Asheville. They're still not purchasing overwhelming the majority of their purchases from the campus farm. There's limits to the scaling of that model, but something that I have been looking more into with our supply team are these hydroponic growers and their potential to have a return on investment with growing lettuce or herbs, those items. But then it still comes to a question around labor. Having a farm on campus certainly has more increased labor, I think, than these hydroponic or aeroponic units. A lot of demand, seasonal variabilities and lots of uncertainties with that. So that's why we are looking at those newer technologies. But there still is a labor demand for those new technologies. You have to 40 hours or 50 hours or whoever it is that's going to manage it. And then the question, is that somebody that we need to hire as a farm manager within dining? Is that somebody from our supply chain? Or can they work with a farmer to have a unit like this to provide produce during our peak seasons, which is not necessarily the traditional growing season?
I don't, on the meat side of things, I think one of the things that you bring up is like sometimes these small local suppliers or farmers don't have the food safety capabilities, and that's something that bigger brands and bigger companies can help bring to the table and invest in farmers. And so I mentioned for Applegate, we from a retail perspective, we introduced a new line of products sourced from a farm in Georgia that has a pastured pork supply. But when we went in there, they, in terms of food safety, like the sausage that we are making is actually, and the processing of the hogs happens on that farm. But we made some major investments in addition with Whole Foods to get that farm and that processing facility up to speed and, with food safety standards and all that kind of thing.
I would just quickly add that I think that in this hub and spoke model conversation, I think all growers, regardless of their size, need to scale appropriate market access. And so I think there are institutions of a wide range of sizes across our lands here. And I think that helping people identify where a scale appropriate fit meets their needs, I think can help address some of those issues that you identified with the footprint of the spoken hub models.
That actually just reminded me that we've had a successful model in the Vermont First and Maine Core, some of our key local initiatives where we're engaging with the local farmer community and scaling up events. So we'll actually host ongoing events throughout starting, we launched in the beginning of the school year, and so we can anticipate the next year's growing season and bring in those local growers and producers and connect them to our providers, whether Gordon Food Service or other ones, so they can understand the requirements for working in that institutional space and also start engaging with our chefs in that conversation about menu planning.
So I just got the 7-minute warning on, I have one burning question to ask, but I'll cede to all of you if there's one other question here. Let's see, in the back.
This question is for Gordon and for Sodexo, and maybe even for Applegate. How do you use sub-aggregators to connect to local markets and local farms as a way of getting around the hub and spoke of your distribution centers?
And your name and organization?
I'm sorry, I'm Christine Kwan from Eastern Market in Detroit.
Great. And Ravi, did you have a last question?
In some form or the other, the panelists represent, the supply chain that connects to the institution as a buyer, which will be the next panel. But the previous panel, we had, standards, monitoring organizations. How do you see, if you think about the representation from the previous panel, your organizations connecting with them to ensure social environmental responsibility in what you do, so that you can meet the institutions who are the buyers' needs or value system?
At Sodexo, we always want to partner with these organizations. We're not trying to be the know-it-alls about everything. This is a stakeholder engagement process. So we're always reaching out to those organizations. I'm passing my business card around to everyone. I want to continue those conversations. We engage from a supply chains perspective. We're involved with a lot of organizations, Better Buying Lab, Sustainable Purchasing Leadership Coalition, groups that are experts in these various spaces. It's really key to get that, to make sure that it's a constant process of evolution with sustainability and sustainability criteria. So we want to continue to improve those processes.
If I can add to that, I think collaboration is key for Applegate. We and Hormel working with third-party groups. We're not experts in antibiotics and antibiotic use, but Pew is, and the Antibiotic Resistance Action Center at George Washington University, Dr. Lance Price. So we work with people like that to get certifications. We work with animal welfare groups like Global Animal Partnership and ASPCA to talk about animal welfare standards. So I think collaboration with nonprofits, NGOs, and other institutions is key to making sure that we are giving institutions and food service and consumers, even at retail, what they're wanting and what they're looking for in transparency.
Sure. So, Brenda, but I want to address the sub-aggregator question in the back. So we definitely want to encourage those kinds of partnerships. I think it does help to aggregate, whether you're in you're a group of farmers that just want to pull resources together in a co-op kind of model, or you're actually an aggregator organization in a region. We usually still bring those various groups into our supply chain through our various distributors, whether it's Gordon's or a regional produce hub. The reason that we still do that and we don't purchase usually directly from those organizations is that we still have to make sure that they meet our safety requirements, are vetted for various requirements in purchasing food. And we do rely on our distributors to provide those services. It's with the reach of our supply chain and the way that we work, it would become overburdensome for us to partner with a lot of individual farms, and it also create a situation where it wasn't safe about the food that we're serving.
Yes, you bring up a very good point. Yeah, so the information we as a company will, for the sub-aggregators, it depends on, I think, so we have individuals in each division that will work with local farmers and looking at what our customers' needs are. Again, back to there's a lot of certifications that we require to make sure that they're meeting all those needs. So there might be some farmers we just absolutely can't work with because they don't have the certifications. So it's a lot of work, but we're constantly looking at are there maybe software systems out there that are tracking this type of information that could help us to identify that. So there's a lot of things in the works that we're looking at to make that more user-friendly for everyone. I also think it depends on the segment and what they're requiring as well. So on the K-12 side, there's a lot of regulations when it comes to the monies that they get from the government along with who they buy for. So there's contracts out there that on produce especially, we might not be the supplier that won the produce contract, but yet we are forced to bring in from a produce supplier and pick up from them to be able to bring it to our warehouses to ship to our customers. So a lot of different things and requirements there. And then also your question around working with the different associations, we absolutely are open to that. We just became a member actually of the ACU organization. We are one of the few distribution companies out there that have partnered with MSC, where all of our distribution centers are certified. We take that very seriously. So we are always looking at, again, our sustainable practices and what we're doing. Like everyone said, we are no expert, and we really rely on our relationships and our vendor communities and third-party services and organizations that are out there to learn more and make us stronger and better for our customers.
Jeremy, last word, aggregators and partnerships.
I don't have the depth of industry experience that these guys have, but I know from working on the production end with producers of a variety of scales, I think if there's a possibility to work with those kinds of intermediary aggregators, I don't think that all of the issues in the food system can be balanced basically, and our societal inequities can be balanced through just looking to squeeze all those equity issues out of the food system as the boundary condition. So I think as institutions and as companies, we can look at larger boundary conditions on how we're scoping and scaling the work we're doing for achieving both our sustainability outcomes and our mission and economic goals. So.
Thank you. Thank you, all of you, and thank you for the engagement and the questions. And speaking of sustainable, locally sourced, delicious food, I think it's lunchtime. Any announcements for lunch? Or? So 1 hour for lunch right outside. Thank you.